Behind the high walls of a billionaire's mansion lived a secret no one dared to speak of. A daughter, born blind. A father, powerful, yet hiding a truth darker than gold could cover. And a maid, an outsider, whose eyes saw what no one else dared to see. What she discovered in that house would not only shake the family, but also test faith, loyalty, and love. Stay with me, because this story is not what you think. Every smile hides a wound. Every shadow hides a secret. And the shocking truth is waiting to be uncovered. Hello friends, thank you so much for stopping by. Please support me by subscribing to my channel, like, and share this video to your family and friends. I truly appreciate your kind heart. So let's continue. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Outside the tall iron gates of Mr. David's mansion, the city still buzzed with life. Cars rushed by, laughter from late-night clubs echoed in the distance. But inside those gates, inside that massive house of glass and stone, there was only silence. For many years that silence had ruled, silence and sorrow. Because in the heart of that mansion lived Grace, the only child of billionaire David Cole. Grace had been born blind. She had never seen her father's face, never seen the colors of the sky, never seen her own reflection. To the world outside, David had it all. Power, wealth, respect. But to him, it was nothing. Because every night when he sat at his dinner table, his daughter's empty eyes reminded him of what money could never buy. Grace was 15 now. Her body had grown, her voice had softened, but her world was still covered in darkness. She knew the sound of the garden fountain, the texture of the marble walls, the smell of her father's cologne. But she had never known light. And David hated himself for it. Doctors had tried, specialists had flown in from all over the world. Every surgery failed, every promise ended in tears, and though David could buy anything else, he could not buy sight for his child. So the mansion stayed heavy with sorrow, until the day Mary arrived. Mary was not like the other workers who came and left. She was a simple woman, born in a small village far away. She had no fine clothes, no special education, only a Bible she carried in her old handbag and a heart full of faith. She was hired as a maid to clean the house, but it didn't take long for everyone to notice. Mary carried something money could not buy, a strange kind of peace. While others bowed low before David's wealth, Mary spoke gently but without fear. While the staff rushed to impress, she simply did her work with care. And Grace liked her, maybe because Mary didn't treat her like a fragile vase. She spoke to Grace as though she were whole. She laughed with her, sang to her, and even guided her hands to feel the shapes of flowers and books. The mansion that once felt like a tomb now began to whisper with life. But what no one knew, what no one could imagine, was that Mary had been sent for more than dusting tables and folding sheets. She had been sent for a discovery that would shake the walls of that mansion and uncover secrets long buried. It began one evening. Grace sat alone in the music room, her pale hands moving across the piano keys. She couldn't see the notes, but she had learned to feel them. Her song was soft, sad, and slow. Mary came in quietly with a tray of food. She stood for a moment listening. The girl's fingers trembled on the keys, and the sound was like tears turned into music. "Beautiful," Mary whispered. Grace lifted her head. "Is it really?" "It is," Mary said, setting the tray down. "Your music carries a voice of longing." Grace smiled faintly. "Longing for something I'll never have." Mary's heart ached. She walked over and sat beside her. "You think so?" Grace nodded. "I dream of light, Mary. Even though I've never seen it, I feel it when the sun touches my skin. But it will never be mine." Mary placed a hand over hers. "Child, you don't know what tomorrow holds." Grace turned her face toward her, unseeing eyes wide. "Do you really believe God could still do something for me?" Mary did not answer with words. Instead, she took her old Bible from her bag, opened it to a worn page, and read in her calm voice, "With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible." Grace listened, and for the first time in many years, her heart dared to hope. But hope was not the only thing stirring in that house. That same night, Mary was cleaning Grace's room when she noticed something strange. On the desk, hidden under a pile of old letters, she found a sealed envelope. The handwriting on it was shaky, almost desperate. It was addressed not to David, but to Grace. Mary's hand trembled. She knew she should not read another person's letter, but something in her spirit pressed her. With a deep breath, she opened it. The letter was short, but its words cut through her like a knife. "If you ever learn the truth, forgive us. The darkness in your eyes is not from birth. It was given to you. Someone wanted it so." Mary gasped. She dropped the letter as if it had burned her fingers. Her heart pounded. What did it mean? Grace was not born blind? Someone wanted it so? She bent to pick the paper up again, but before she could, the door creaked. "Mary?" Grace's voice came softly from the hallway. Mary quickly shoved the letter back under the papers. "Yes, child? Are you all right?" "I couldn't sleep," Grace said, stepping into the room. "Will you sing to me?" Mary forced a smile, though her chest was tight with fear. "Of course." She sat by the bed, humming a soft hymn. Grace laid her head down, drifting slowly to sleep. But Mary's eyes stayed wide open, staring into the dark. The words of that letter echoed in her mind like thunder. "The darkness in your eyes is not from birth. It was given to you." If that was true, then Grace's blindness was not just a tragedy. It was a secret. A secret someone had tried to bury, and Mary had just uncovered the first piece of it. As the night deepened, the mansion slept, but Mary could not. She paced the floor of her small room, clutching her Bible. "Lord," she whispered, "what is this? Why did you bring me here?" Her heart pounded with questions. Who wrote the letter? Was it true? And if it was, who had done this to Grace? She remembered the sorrow in David's eyes, the emptiness in Grace's voice. If they knew the truth, it would break them. But Mary also knew one thing clearly. This was no accident. She had been placed in this house for a reason, and she would not rest until she uncovered the full truth. What Mary did not know was that someone else in the mansion already knew her discovery. Someone who had been watching her closely. That very night, from the shadows of the corridor, a pair of eyes glared at Mary's door. Cold, hard, watching. And a whisper slipped through the silence. She must not find out. The next morning came with a heavy sky. Clouds hung low, and the air smelled of rain. Inside the mansion, staff moved about quietly, dusting, sweeping, polishing. But Mary's mind was far away. The letter from the night before still burned in her thoughts. "The darkness in your eyes is not from birth. It was given to you." Who had written it, and what did they mean? Mary's hands trembled as she wiped the long dining table. She kept glancing at Grace, who sat in her chair sipping warm milk. The girl smiled softly, her blind eyes turned toward the sound of Mary's footsteps. "Mary?" Grace asked. "Yes, child?" "You sound worried." Mary froze. Grace could not see, but she could feel. She always sensed moods, tones, even the heaviness and silence. Mary forced a small laugh. "I'm fine, just a little tired." Grace tilted her head. "You're not telling me everything." Mary set the cloth down and walked closer. She placed a hand gently on Grace's shoulder. "There are things you don't need to carry yet, child. For now, let me carry them." Grace frowned but said nothing, and in that quiet moment, Mary made a promise in her heart. "I will find the truth. I will protect this girl, even if it costs me." Later that day, Mary slipped back into Grace's room. The papers were still on the desk where she had left them. Her heart raced as she carefully pulled the letter out again. The handwriting was shaky, almost frightened. She looked closely at the bottom of the page. There was no signature, but there was a small ink blot, like the pen had slipped from a trembling hand. Mary whispered to herself, "Lord, show me who wrote this." She tucked the letter inside her apron pocket. From that moment, she knew she was no longer just a maid. She was now a seeker of secrets. But secrets are dangerous things. That same afternoon, as Mary was heading down the grand staircase, she felt eyes on her. She turned quickly, but no one was there. Only the tall portraits of David's ancestors lined against the walls, their painted eyes cold and unblinking. Still, Mary could feel it. Someone was watching. She gripped her Bible tighter and hurried on. In the evening, a storm broke over the mansion. Thunder cracked, and rain lashed against the windows. The house shook with the sound of it. Grace was frightened of storms. Mary stayed with her in the bedroom, reading softly from the Psalms until her breathing calmed. But when Grace finally drifted to sleep, Mary decided to search. The letter had spoken of truth. If truth was hidden, maybe it was buried somewhere in the house. So, with a candle in hand, she moved quietly through the dark corridors. The library was the first place she entered. Rows upon rows of books towered over her, their spines old and dusty. She lit the candle higher, her eyes scanning the shelves. Something caught her attention, an old wooden chest tucked into the corner behind a chair. Mary knelt, her hands brushing over the lid. It was locked, but the lock looked weak. She hesitated, then whispered, "Forgive me, Lord, if this is wrong, but if it will save the child." She pressed the end of a metal hairpin into the lock. With a click, it opened. Inside were papers, old hospital documents, letters, and photographs. Mary's eyes widened. There was a photograph of Grace as a baby. She was lying in her mother's arms, eyes wide open, and clear. Mary gasped. Grace's eyes had been normal, so the letter was true. Her hands shook as she reached for another paper. It was a medical record. Words leapt out at her. Corneal damage. Induced. Not natural. Mary covered her mouth to stop herself from crying out. Her knees weakened. Induced? Someone had caused the blindness? She dug deeper into the papers. One letter stood out, written by a doctor. It read, "Mr. Cole, as requested, the procedure has been done. The child will not be able to see again. Payment received." Mary's blood ran cold. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Jesus, have mercy." It wasn't an accident. It wasn't fate. Someone, maybe even Grace's own father, had paid for this. A sound behind her made her jump. The library door creaked. A shadow moved. Mary quickly shoved the papers back into the chest and closed the lid. She blew out the candle and pressed herself against the wall. The shadow entered. Footsteps echoed on the wooden floor. Slow, careful, searching. Mary held her breath. The figure moved closer. The storm outside flashed lightning through the window, and for a brief second, Mary saw the face. It was Thomas, the head butler. His eyes glinted strangely as he scanned the room. "Who's here?" he whispered. Mary's heart hammered. She stayed perfectly still, praying he would not find her. Thomas walked closer to the chest. His hand touched the lid, then paused. He looked around once more. Then, after a tense moment, he turned and left. Mary exhaled, her body trembling. Thomas knew, she was sure of it. That night, Mary could not sleep. She sat by Grace's bed, holding her hand, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. How could she tell her? How could she tell David? And what if Thomas was part of it? The storm outside finally began to calm, but inside Mary's heart, a new storm raged. The next morning, David called for Mary. She entered his study nervously. He sat behind his desk, his face hard, his fingers drumming the wood. "I hear you've been wandering at night," he said flatly. Mary's chest tightened. "Sir, I was only Only what? David's eyes narrowed. Do not forget your place here. You are a maid. Nothing more. Mary bowed her head, but inside, anger burned. A maid I may be, but God brought me here for more than sweeping floors. David sighed, rubbing his forehead. Just don't upset Grace. She's fragile. She doesn't need more pain. Mary nodded and quietly left the study. But she knew now. David was hiding something. That evening, as the sun set behind the rain-soaked gardens, Grace reached for Mary's hand. Mary, she whispered, do you think one day I might see? Mary looked into those empty eyes. Her throat tightened. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to say, child, your healing is near. But the truth she now carried was too heavy. So she only said, I believe God can do anything. Grace smiled faintly. Then I'll keep hoping. Mary pulled her close, tears in her eyes, and in that moment, she vowed once again. No matter what danger comes, I will not stop. I will uncover the whole truth. For this child. For her future. What Mary didn't know was that in another part of the mansion, Thomas was on the phone. His voice was low, his tone sharp. She's asking too many questions, he said. If she learns everything, we're finished. A pause. Then Thomas added, yes, I'll take care of her. The sun rose over the mansion, but the morning felt colder than usual. The gardens glittered with dew. The fountains splashed softly, yet inside the house an invisible war had begun. Mary woke with heaviness in her chest. Her mind returned again and again to what she had seen in the library. The photograph of baby Grace with clear eyes, the cruel letter from the doctor, the words, procedure, payment received. Each time she remembered, her stomach twisted. Someone had stolen Grace's sight. Someone close. And Mary feared the shadows were already moving against her. That morning, Thomas, the head butler, greeted her with a smile that felt too sharp. You look tired, Mary, he said, his eyes narrow, voice smooth like oil. Were you up late again? Mary gripped the handle of the mop. She forced herself to smile. Just praying. Storms keep me awake. Thomas chuckled. Ah, yes. Storms reveal many things, don't they? Her heart skipped. Was that a hint? Did he know she had found the chest? Before she could answer, David entered the hall. Thomas, prepare the car. I have a meeting downtown. I'll be gone until evening. Yes, sir, Thomas bowed, then glanced at Mary one last time before leaving. Mary exhaled slowly. She whispered under her breath, Lord, give me wisdom. Later, Mary joined Grace in the garden. The girl loved to sit near the fountain and listen to the water. She leaned back in her chair, her blind eyes closed, her face turned toward the warmth of the sun. It feels like light is touching me, Grace whispered. Mary sat beside her. One day, child, you'll see more than light. You'll see colors, shapes, and the beauty of this world. Grace smiled sadly. Sometimes I think Daddy doesn't believe that anymore. Mary hesitated. Do you still believe? Grace lifted her chin. Yes, because if I stop hoping, then I have nothing. Mary's eyes watered. This fragile girl carried more strength in her soul than many with perfect sight. But hope was fragile too, and the truth Mary held could shatter it. That afternoon, Mary returned to the library. She had to dig deeper. If Thomas suspected her, time was short. She knelt again at the chest, her fingers trembling as she opened it. There were more documents she had not seen before. She pulled out a faded envelope, sealed with wax. The name on the front made her freeze. Eleanor Cole, Grace's mother. Mary's hands shook as she broke the seal. Inside was a letter written in delicate handwriting. David, I beg you, do not go through with this. Our daughter is innocent. She deserves light, not darkness. If you love her, stop this madness before it's too late. Mary's heart pounded. So it was David. David himself had ordered this? Why would a father do such a thing to his own child? Her head spun. She pressed her hand against the desk for balance, and then she heard it. A faint creak. The door. She turned quickly. Thomas stood there, his face unreadable. Well, well, he said softly, stepping inside. Curiosity is a dangerous habit, Mary. Mary's throat went dry. She clutched the letter to her chest. Thomas's eyes glinted. Put that back, now. Her heart raced, but she shook her head. This girl deserves the truth. I will not stop. Thomas's smile vanished. You don't understand what you're playing with. Do you think you can protect Grace? Do you think you can stand against him? Mary swallowed hard. Against who? Her father? Thomas's silence was the loudest answer. Then his voice dropped lower. Stay out of this, Mary, or you won't last long here. He turned and walked out, leaving the door wide open behind him. Mary collapsed into the chair, trembling. Fear clawed at her. But deeper still, a fire was growing. If Thomas wanted to silence her, then the truth was more dangerous and more important than she realized. That evening, Grace played the piano again. The notes were soft, slow, almost like a prayer. Mary sat beside her, trying to calm her racing thoughts. Mary, Grace said quietly, do you ever feel like something in this house is hidden from me? Mary froze. Why do you say that? Grace's fingers lingered on the keys. Because whenever I ask Daddy about my blindness, he changes the subject, and sometimes I hear whispers at night. Mary's heart clenched. She longed to tell her everything, but she wasn't ready, not until she understood the whole truth. So she only said, there are things in this house, yes. But remember this. The light always reveals what the dark tries to hide. Grace tilted her head. Then I want the light, Mary, even if it hurts. Mary kissed her forehead, tears in her eyes. One day, child. One day. Late that night, Mary couldn't sleep. She sat on her small bed, praying. Lord, I am afraid, but I know you didn't bring me here by chance. Show me what to do. Protect Grace. Protect us from the evil in this house. As she prayed, she heard something. A faint scrape at her door. Her breath caught. She stood slowly, gripping her Bible. The handle turned. The door creaked open. A folded note slid under the gap. Then the footsteps faded. Mary knelt, her heart thundering, and picked it up. Inside were just 5 words. Leave, or you will die. Mary's body shook. She sat back, clutching the paper, her eyes stung with tears. This was no longer just about secrets. This was about survival. Someone in this mansion wanted her gone, or dead. But Mary lifted her chin. She whispered into the darkness, I will not leave this child, even if it costs me my life. The next day, David returned from his meeting. He entered Grace's room with a rare smile. My dear, he said, kissing her forehead, I've arranged for a new specialist to visit. He claims he can help. Grace's face lit up. Truly, Daddy? Yes. We must never give up. Mary's eyes narrowed. The words felt hollow, especially after the letter from Eleanor. David turned to Mary. His smile faded. Make sure everything is prepared. The doctor arrives tomorrow. Yes, sir, Mary said, bowing her head. But inside, her spirit churned. A new doctor? Another procedure? Was this a chance for healing, or another plan to keep Grace in darkness? She didn't know, but she would be ready. That night, as the mansion grew quiet, Thomas met David in the study. She knows too much, Thomas whispered. David's jaw tightened. Handle it, before she ruins everything. Thomas nodded. Consider it done. And while they plotted in the shadows, Mary knelt in her small room, whispering into the silence. Lord, be my strength, because the battle has just begun. The morning came heavy with clouds again. The mansion seemed restless, as if the very walls knew something dark was about to enter. Mary rose early, her spirit unsettled. She had spent most of the night in prayer, her Bible open on her lap, whispering for God's protection. But fear still clung to her like a shadow, because today, the doctor was coming. Grace was excited. She sat in the garden, her blind eyes turned toward the sound of birds. She hummed softly, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Mary," she said, "Daddy told me the new doctor is different from the others. He believes in miracles." Mary's heart ached. She didn't want to crush the child's hope, but something in her spirit felt wrong. "Sometimes," Mary said carefully, "people wear masks. They say one thing, but inside their hearts hold another." Grace tilted her head. "Do you think this doctor is wearing a mask?" Mary squeezed her hand. "I don't know yet, child, but I will find out." By afternoon, the car arrived at the mansion gates. A tall man stepped out, dressed in a long black coat. He carried a small leather case polished until it shone. His name was Dr. Samuel Reed. He was polite, his voice smooth, his smile practiced. But Mary noticed his eyes, cold, calculating. They never softened, not even when he greeted Grace. "Such a lovely young lady," he said, kneeling before her. "I believe we can do wonders for you." Grace smiled shyly. "Thank you, doctor." Mary stood nearby, her arms crossed, her eyes never leaving him. Dr. Reed glanced at her once, and in that glance she felt it. He knew she was watching. He knew she did not trust him. Inside the study, David spoke with the doctor in hushed tones. Mary couldn't hear all of it, but she caught fragments as she passed by the door. "Same as before? No mistakes this time. Payment will be doubled." Mary's chest tightened. Her suspicions grew heavier. This wasn't about healing. This was about control. That evening, Dr. Reed examined Grace. He shined a light into her eyes, asked questions, wrote notes in his leather book. Grace laughed at one point. "I can't see the light you're shining, doctor, but I can feel the warmth." Mary's throat burned with unshed tears. The doctor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Tomorrow, we begin with a small procedure. Nothing to fear, my dear." Grace's face glowed with hope. "Mary, did you hear that? Tomorrow." Mary forced a smile. "Yes, child." But deep inside she whispered, "Lord, stop this if it is evil." That night, Mary went back to the library. She needed more answers. She lit a candle and opened the chest again. She found another letter, hidden deep at the bottom. It was written by Eleanor, Grace's mother. "If you are reading this, then I have failed. I tried to save her, but David would not listen. He believes darkness will protect our daughter from enemies. But how can a father steal light from his own child? If you love Grace, one day give her the truth." Mary covered her mouth with her hand, tears slipping down her cheeks. So it was true. David had blinded his own child, believing it would protect her. Protect her from what? Mary's mind swirled with questions. Enemies? What enemies? She clutched the letter to her chest. The truth must be told. But how can I tell a girl her father stole her sight? As she slipped out of the library, she froze. Thomas stood in the hallway waiting. His face was hard, his eyes like steel. "Busy night, Mary?" he asked softly. Mary's breath caught. She hid the letter behind her back. "Just cleaning." Thomas stepped closer. "You are playing with fire. One more step and you'll be burned." Mary's hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. "I fear God, not you." Thomas's lips curled into a thin smile. "Then you should pray very hard tonight." He walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Mary leaned against the wall, her knees weak. She knew now. Thomas was not just a servant. He was guarding David's secret. The next morning came with a strange stillness. Grace was dressed in a white gown, ready for the procedure. David stood by her side, calm but distant. Dr. Reed set out his instruments, silver tools that glinted under the light. Mary's stomach turned. Something felt wrong. "Sir," she said, stepping forward, "may I ask what this procedure truly is?" David's eyes narrowed. "It is not your place to ask, Mary." "But Grace is like my own child," Mary said firmly. "If something is being done to her, I have the right to know." David's jaw tightened. "Enough. Leave the room." Grace clutched Mary's hand. "No, Daddy, please, I want her here." David hesitated, then nodded stiffly. "Fine. She may stay." Mary knelt beside Grace, whispering in her ear, "Whatever happens, I am here. God is here." Grace smiled weakly, squeezing her hand. The doctor leaned over Grace, his tools ready. His face was calm, too calm. Mary watched every move, her heart pounding. "Just relax," Dr. Reed said. "This will not hurt much." He lifted one of the instruments. It glimmered under the light. But Mary saw his hand tremble, not with care, but with calculation. And suddenly she knew. This wasn't healing. This was harm. She shot to her feet. "Stop!" The room froze. David turned sharply. "Mary, what are you doing?" Mary's voice shook but was firm. "This man is not here to heal. He is here to keep her blind." Gasps filled the room. The staff at the doorway whispered among themselves. Dr. Reed's eyes darkened. "What nonsense is this?" Mary pulled the folded letter from her apron and held it up. "Grace's mother warned about this. She begged David to stop. You think I don't know? You think God did not reveal it? This girl was not born blind. She was made blind." Silence. Grace's mouth opened. Her face went pale. "What? What are you saying?" Mary's eyes filled with tears. "Child, your blindness was not from God. It was done to you." The room erupted with voices. Shock, denial, questions. David slammed his fist on the table. "Enough!" But Grace's trembling voice cut through the chaos. "Daddy? Is it true?" David's face turned white. His lips moved, but no words came. Grace's blind eyes filled with tears. She whispered again, louder this time. "Is it true?" David closed his eyes. His silence was the only answer. Grace broke down, sobbing, her small body shaking. Mary wrapped her arms around her, holding her close, whispering prayers. The truth had been spoken. The mask had been ripped away. But in that moment, Mary knew. This was only the beginning. Because David's enemies, whoever they were still out there. And the mansion was about to face a storm greater than any before. The mansion had never known such silence. Not even on stormy nights. Not even in its darkest years. Grace's sobs had fallen quiet. She sat curled in Mary's arms, her face buried against the maid's chest. The truth had been spoken, and now it hung heavy in the air, pressing against every heart in the room. David stood frozen. His head was bowed, his fists clenched at his sides. The mighty billionaire, the man who commanded cities with his money, looked smaller than ever. "Daddy," Grace's trembling voice broke the silence. "Why?" David's lips moved, but no sound came. His shoulders shook. Finally he whispered, "I wanted to protect you." Grace's head lifted, her tear-stained face turned toward him. "Protect me? By stealing my eyes?" David staggered back, as if the words struck him like stones. Mary held Grace tighter, her own tears falling. "She deserved the truth, sir. Not darkness, not lies." David pressed his hands over his face. His voice cracked as he spoke. "When you were born, Grace, I was told enemies wanted to harm us, business rivals, men who would do anything to hurt me, even through my child. I thought, if they couldn't see your eyes, if they thought you were weak, they would leave you alone." Grace gasped. "So you blinded me to save yourself?" David shook his head fiercely. "No, to save you. I loved you too much to risk losing you." Grace's tears fell faster. Loved me? You broke me." Her words echoed through the room like thunder. Dr. Reed quietly gathered his instruments. His face gave nothing away, but his cold eyes betrayed irritation. He knew his role in this secret had just been exposed. David turned to him sharply. "Leave us." The doctor bowed slightly, collected his case, and walked out. But before he closed the door, his gaze lingered on Mary. And in that gaze was a silent promise. This is not over. The hours that followed were heavy with grief. Grace locked herself in her room, refusing to see her father. Mary stayed with her, singing softly, holding her hand as she wept. When the girl finally slept, Mary stepped into the hall. She found David sitting alone in the study, his face buried in his hands. He looked up as she entered. His eyes were red. "Do you hate me, Mary?" Mary's voice was soft but steady. "I don't hate you, but I cannot excuse what you've done. You feared men more than you feared God, and in that fear, you wounded your own child." David's eyes filled again. "I thought I was saving her. Now I see. I destroyed her." Mary placed her Bible on the desk in front of him. "There is forgiveness, but first, there must be truth. All of it. No more secrets." David swallowed hard, nodding slowly. "There is more. Things you don't know." Before he could continue, a crash shook the house. Glass shattered. A scream echoed from the corridor. Mary and David jumped to their feet. The sound of heavy boots thundered through the mansion. Intruders, masked men stormed through the halls, armed, ruthless, their voices sharp. "Find the girl! Don't let her escape!" Mary's heart pounded. She grabbed David's arm. "They're here for Grace!" David's face went pale. "They've come at last!" Mary didn't wait. She ran to Grace's room, bursting through the door. The girl sat up, frightened by the noise. "Mary, what's happening?" "No time to explain, child. We must go." Mary pulled her up, guiding her quickly toward the servants' passage. Behind them, shouts and footsteps grew louder. Grace clung to Mary's hand. "I can't see! I'll slow you down!" Mary shook her head fiercely. "No, child. You're stronger than you know. Just trust me." They slipped into the hidden corridor. The walls were narrow, the air thick with dust. Mary led the way, whispering prayers under her breath. Behind them, footsteps closed in. The men had discovered the passage. "Faster, child, faster," Mary urged. Grace stumbled but pressed on, her faith in Mary guiding her steps. Finally, they reached the old door that opened into the garden. Mary pushed it hard, and the night air rushed in. But just as they stepped outside, Thomas appeared. He stood waiting, a pistol in his hand. Mary froze, pulling Grace behind her. "Thomas," she whispered. His face was cold. "You should have left when you had the chance, Mary. I warned you." Grace trembled. "Thomas, why are you doing this?" His jaw tightened. "Because your father's enemies paid me long ago. I was the one who arranged the first doctor. I was the one who made sure you stayed blind. And now, I will finish what I started." Mary's eyes blazed with fury. "You traitor! This child did nothing to you!" Thomas sneered. She was never the target. It was always about destroying David, and she was the key. Before he could fire, David's voice roared behind them. "Thomas!" The butler turned. David stood at the edge of the passage, a pistol of his own in hand. His face was fierce, his hands steady. "You served me for 20 years, David said coldly, "and all along you were the snake in my house." Thomas smirked. "A rich man like you should know. Everyone has a price." The guns pointed at each other. The night held its breath. Mary pulled Grace closer, shielding her with her body. Then, 2 shots rang out. When the smoke cleared, Thomas lay on the ground, his pistol fallen from his hand. David stood, clutching his arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. Mary rushed to Grace, holding her tightly. The girl sobbed into her chest. David staggered closer. "Grace, I'm sorry. I failed you." Grace lifted her tear-streaked face. You can't give me my eyes back, Daddy, but you can give me truth. No more lies. David sank to his knees, weeping. No more lies, my child. Never again. The police arrived soon after, dragging away the masked men who had been captured. Thomas's body was taken from the garden. Dr. Reed vanished before dawn. No one saw him leave. But the mansion would never be the same. Days later, Grace sat by the fountain, the sun warm on her face. Mary sat beside her, their hands clasped. Mary, Grace whispered, sometimes I wonder if I will ever see, but even if I don't, I know God has a plan. Mary's eyes filled with tears. Yes, child, your life is not broken. Your story is not finished. David approached slowly. His arm was bandaged, his face tired, but his eyes softer than Mary had ever seen. He knelt before Grace. My daughter, I cannot undo the past, but I promise you this. I will spend the rest of my life seeking your healing. Not through lies, not through fear, but through truth and prayer. Grace reached out, her hand touching his cheek. Then I forgive you, Daddy, not because you deserve it, but because I need peace. David wept, holding her hands. Mary looked up at the sky. The clouds broke, and sunlight poured over them. And though Grace's eyes were still blind, her heart saw something brighter than light. Hope. Mary whispered to herself. The darkness tried to cover her. But the Lord has the final word, and His word is light. Dear friend, this story reminds us that no darkness is too deep for God's light to shine through. Grace was born blind, betrayed by those she trusted, yet hope still found her. And the same God who gave her strength can give you strength too. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave your thoughts and prayers in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe so more souls can hear stories that lift the heart and strengthen the faith. Stay strong, stay faithful, and never forget, when people fail us, God never does.